welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. Um, and again, Jason, the super producer, I hate to say it, he's busy working right now because we're recording this during the day. And, us government employees, it's so cushy. I got off early. I didn't even have to work today. That's how good I got it working for the government. So all my fellow government employees are rolling their eyes right now. But but so it's just no Jason super producer, but he should be back for our next episode. But before we get started with our guest, I just want to remind everybody that if you want to try to follow us or connect with us or send us a story or whatever, you can find us on From the Shadows on Facebook. You can find our forum page After the Shadows on Facebook. You can find me, Shane Grove Author, on Instagram, or you can find us at the From the Shadows podcast Instagram page, or just a good old-fashioned website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. Hit the contact button. It'll send me an email. And we love getting emails from listeners and, that just want to say hey or share an experience or whatever. And if you got an experience, I'll get a hold of you. And don't forget that you can also get some of our extra content on the Patreon page. You just go to From the Shadows podcast on Patreon. You can see what's all up there. I think we put all of our episodes up a day early. I know we've had a little bit of trouble with some of this technology, but we're trying to get it straightened out. Everything works great until it doesn't work, So yes, you can go check stuff out there on the Patreon page, and we put up some extra episodes and some bonus stuff. So, so with that all being said, I'm looking forward to talking to. We're trying to connect with this guest of ours today, from the great state of Utah. And everybody that listens knows how much fun I've had in Utah in the last month or so, including the speeding ticket, but we will not talk about that. I want to welcome Jordan from the great state of Utah. Jordan, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Happy to be on with you.
well, I'm glad to have you on, and I think you reached out to me on. You reminded me, because I'm terrible with remembering stuff, through Instagram. Probably when we just got back from Utah, or we're still out there in Utah.
You just barely got back, yeah.
Just barely got back, and I have mixed emotions about you waiting until we just got back, because I think you've got a couple cool stories from out in Utah that you want to share that I might have been talked into checking out while I was out there, because I did a lot of stupid stuff in Utah. So I probably could have been talked into going and seeing where, you had these different experiences. So do you want to share with everybody what it was you reached out and told me?
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping to catch you while you were still here. I didn't realize that I was listening to the episode about Moab when you were already back. I thought I was right on target with why you were still here, but that's unfortunate, because that would have been cool to take you out and show you where I had my sighting. But yeah,
you mean leave me where you had your sighting, or you mean show me? Okay, you didn't say leave me. Okay.
Yep, just show you.
Okay.
But yeah, so I guess I can start with I led off with the Sasquatch sighting here in Utah, out in the West Desert, which it's weird to say Sasquatch sighting in the West Desert, because normally in Utah you're associating those kind of sightings with the Wasatch Mountains or the Uintas, and getting way up in those high elevation alpine environments. But truth be told, you get out into the Stansburys, where I was at, and you can transition from this kind of high desert environment to an alpine environment within that in that range. If you're standing on the outside of that range and just kind of down in the lower foothills, everything it looks like desert. There's just a lot of cedar trees and there's sagebrush and lots of rocks and what you'd expect to see in the desert. But as you go up further in that area, there's lakes, there's pine trees, it starts to look like the Uintas or the Wasatch, but it's just this kind of an island. It's mountain range. If you ever look it up, the Stansbury Mountains in Utah, you'll notice that there's just desert on both sides of it, and not much in way of cities or anything either. And my sighting happened down towards the southern end of the range, and it's a lower portion of the range, and so this canyon's not like some canyons you'd expect to drive through where there's lots of sheer rock on both sides. There is in some parts, but mostly it feels like just really deep foothills. But the sighting happened right at the top of that, and it was about 4:30 a.m. Last year. We were on our way back from, I guess I should give the context why we're even out there at 4:30 a.m. We had started the night by road cruising, and what we mean by road cruising when I say that is we'll drive these desert stretches of road at night with the brights on, looking for snakes, because they'll kind of just come across. They'll come across the road. They don't know what the road is, but they get to the road and the asphalt's warm from the daytime sun.
But Jordan, just let me stop you right there.
Go ahead.
They don't know what the road is, but you know what snakes are. So why are you out at 4 o'clock in the morning looking for snakes? I mean, this is the craziest. When we first started talking, I was like, "Who? This guy's the craziest person I know." Like, it's either swimming with sharks or looking for snakes. I don't understand. What's the deal?
Well, I can't relate to the swimming with sharks. That's something I won't do. But but I will go looking for snakes.
I don't understand it. I think they'd go hand in hand, to be honest.
It just takes a little learning about them and understanding their behavior, and then you realize they're not so bad. And it's kind of the special little trick there. Definitely not for everybody, but if you take the time to understand them, you can get used to them.
I gotta think. Didn't Quint say that in Jaws to those guys before they went out? It just takes a little understanding. I mean, come on.
I think so.
Okay. All right. We've digressed enough. So you're out looking for snakes, which that's just something I can't. I would drive. I will tell you, I'll drive if you're jumping out to grab the snakes. But go ahead. So you're out looking for snakes. Okay.
Yeah, we're out looking for the harder to find species that are out there, and they'll just kind of stop on the road, and we'll get out and take pictures of them, and in a way, just for fun, kind of document what we're finding, and then move them off the road and be on our way. And there comes a point in the night where it just kind of starts to wane off, and there's nothing. Time to go home and go to bed, kind of thing. And so we make our way down to the southern end of the valley, and then before the Army base, and some people listening might know what Dugway is. The Army base out there, but we'll turn from that and head up to the canyon. And at this point, we'll still drive slow as we're going to the canyon, because we found snakes there before. And so we don't want to run them over. So we'll keep going slow, about 20 miles an hour. And we had and there's deer. There's antelope kind of down in the valley, pronghorn. And then as you get up into the canyon, there's deer. And you don't want to hit one of those either. That'll mess up your car. And so I wasn't aiming to mess up my wife's Subaru either. I'd be in hot water if I did that. And so we're driving slow, trying to, dodging deer. We're seeing the eye shine from deer as we're going up the canyon, and again, we're only going 20 miles an hour. And another car came around us as we're going up the canyon and going way too fast. We weren't going fast enough for them, but they were definitely going faster than you should in this canyon that's full of blind turns. And the reason I mention this is because I think this car speeding ahead of us kind of set the sighting up, because what this turns out to be is a road crossing sighting. And as we get to the canyon, this car had already gone up and around this blind bend at the very top of the canyon. And when I say top of the canyon, it's not very high. On one side, the hill goes up about 10 feet and then levels out to a smoother gradient that continues gently up to the mountain. And then on the other side, it drops down about 5 to 8 feet or so. But on a kind of a steep angle that if you were to walk down, you have to sidestep. So it's nothing sheer or scary or crazy up there, but that's what the top of the canyon kind of looks like, to kind of give some imagery there. And so as we come to the top, we're going slow, and we've been seeing deer, and we see eye shine ahead of us as we round this bend at the top. And so we start to slow down more because it's not moving. We don't want, we're thinking it's a deer. We don't want it to run out in front of us. And my friend that was with me in the passenger seat is seeing the same thing. And then the next thing, I'm starting to slow down even more, 20 to 15, because we still don't know what this deer is going to do. And as we start slowing down, all of a sudden this eye shine that looks like it's at about, deer's head height level, plus it's kind of standing over the edge of the road base where it drops off. And so it's, what we're thinking is the deer has probably dropped its head or eye levels kind of lower than it would be. Maybe 4 feet above the road base is what it looked like, is what it seemed like. Hard to, just an estimate, hard to measure from just eyeing it. But we see this low kind of eye level, what we're thinking is a deer, all of a sudden raise up to about a 7-foot level, just straight up. And then we're, okay, this is not a deer. and then it starts walking. So at this point, we're almost coming to a complete stop. We're at maybe 5 miles an hour as we're passing this thing on an angle, and it's walking away from us on an angle down the slope. And the eye shine was like it had a lot of green in it. It was very similar to a lot of animals' eye shine you'll see, but more green than yellow. But there was still some yellow in there. But aside from the color, it was the size of the eye shine that really threw us off, even before this thing stood up. You could just tell the eyes were, I don't know if you could tell the eyes were bigger, but the eye shine was bigger than what you'd see on a deer usually. And then the eyes were closer together. And so that was another thing that was really weird, was the size and the eyes. But then once it stood up, I mean, that didn't help anything. I kind of was pretty sure what I was looking at based on things I've listened to and other road crossing sightings I'd heard. And I turned to my friend, and his jaw's already hanging on the floor, and he's yelling, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I saw it. That's why I was turning to look and see if you were seeing the same thing." And so,
and so it was
both validating each other.
So it was on his side, though, right? So
yeah.
Right? So,
and the windows were down.
Oh boy. Okay. So did you guys stop, or did you guys just keep on going?
Yeah. So I'm already in the mode of jumping and stopping, getting out of the car because what we were doing was snakes all night. And so I had my headlamp around my neck, ready to put it up on my forehead, and we had the windows down, and this is why I mentioned the windows were down, because when I stopped, my friend in the passenger seat and the other guy in the back seat didn't know what was going on. He was looking at his phone, trying to keep from getting motion sickness, and so he had no idea other than my friend and the passengers freaking out. And so they start rolling their windows up because I stopped the car and I'm getting out to go to the edge of the road to shine my headlamp down and see where, if I can get another look at this thing. And they're yelling at me, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Get back in the car. Didn't you see that?" I said, "Well, yeah, I saw it. That's why I wanted to get another look." I didn't get a good enough look. And that kind of got me nervous because they're freaking out. And then plus we're in the middle of a road in a canyon where people drive too fast. And so I had to get back in the car and get moving. But in a way, they kind of made a point. Probably the best decision to go following these creatures, but it didn't feel any immediate danger. It was moving away from us, so that seemed like a good enough decision to at least go to the edge of the road and shine the light down the slope. But they weren't having any part of it.
Well, I got to be honest. I think it'd be a lot safer to do that than to run out and try to grab a picture of a snake in the middle of the road. I gotta be honest. So the dude in the back seat was oblivious. He never even saw anything.
Unfortunately.
Oh,
and
man.
he kicks himself for being on his phone, but at least he was trying to keep from getting motion sickness. He wasn't just scrolling for fun.
So okay, so let me ask you. So your friend that was sitting there, so he obviously on the passenger side, he probably got to see it a little bit longer than you did, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, and I don't know why he waited to tell me. It's just the nature of these sightings, I guess. That's just so shocking to people. It was a couple months later that, let's see, more than a couple months later, we were on our way out there in December. So this sighting was in July of last year, and then we went out in December after I'd been doing some research and different things. I wanted to go out and try some vocalizations, some different things, see if we could, get a response. And we're on our way driving out there in December, and he finally tells me that he's like, "Yeah, we saw it on the side of the road, but that's the first place you saw it." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "We came around the bend." He said, "I saw it in the middle of the headlights, standing in the middle of the road." And I told him, I said, "Hold on a minute. Are you telling me you saw it from the ground up, from the feet to the head?" He said, "Yeah." And he said, "The thing was huge." And, I could tell it was huge just based on where I was seeing it on the side of the road, because I saw from the knees to the head, and it was still towering above the road base, just with its, being a few feet over the edge of the road down the slope. And that was one indicator of the height. But other than him just being the initial shock, I don't know what took him so long to tell me that he saw it from feet to head. I don't know why he wouldn't mention it the first night, but
maybe he thought you saw it too, since you were driving.
Probably.
I guess. And you're probably right. I mean, you're probably right on by saying that car tearing off around you and, blowing by you. I mean, the thing probably, it's desolate out there for sure. And it probably was used to seeing maybe one car, but definitely not two at that time of the morning, and it probably thought, okay, slower. Yeah, the coast is clear. I can go ahead and cross the road. Oh, crap. Here comes
exactly right.
Here goes these guys.
And that's the look we got. That's the exact feeling I got from the look it gave us when it was just dead center in our brights. It gave us that old crap look, kind of that classic deer in the headlights, and so yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to get back around to why that
Yeah,
car.
I would definitely go along with you on that. That's probably um, what it was thinking, or the reasoning behind, why it took off and started to cross the road without looking both ways. I mean, safety first, because obviously it. um, I mean, did you guys? So you guys saw eye shine? Did you get a look at its face?
No, that's the weird thing. And I think this is where I wish so bad for a daytime sighting like this, or it doesn't even have to be, from the car. I wouldn't mind having one step out in the trail in front of me or something. But it's it's hard. Well, maybe it's not that hard to explain. It's just the way the headlights were hitting it. It just seemed, and that was another indicator of how much hair was on this thing. The just kind of that washed out effect from the bright headlights. The I don't know why we couldn't see the face. I think it was just covered in that much hair. Because there wasn't much detail to get from the face. It was just lots of hair hanging down with that eye. And the weird thing, one thing I noticed, and just to kind of explain the washed out effect, not too long after this, maybe a couple weeks, I was still thinking about how odd it looked, because the fur almost looked blurry, but I know it wasn't. I know the fur wasn't just blurry for being blurry. There was a reason. And so I was playing around with the spotlight out at a campground a mile or so below this area, and I shined the light up on some cedar trees on the hill, and when the branches overlap, if you move the spotlight and just illuminate these branches that are overlapping with the peripheral edges of the light where it's a little dimmer, you can make out all the detail. You can see all the detail of the branches, and you can see that there's two branches overlapping. But when I put the branches directly in the middle of the spotlight, the brightest point, it just blurred together. And at that moment, I kind of had an aha moment of what was happening with the hair on this thing and the light. And so, unfortunately, even though it was, I guess it was too well illuminated, but we did see an incredible amount of hair. And that's the one thing, though, that I kick myself. I mean, I shouldn't kick myself. There's not anything I can do about it, but that's one thing I hate about the sightings, that I couldn't see the face, and so I'm always envious of people who've had daytime sightings, and they get a lot of detail out of the face, just because the lighting's normal. But yeah, it was really strange.
Well, how? So I just want to point out to you that if you know that snakes are laying out on the road in the middle of the night, don't you think Bigfoot knows snakes are laying out in the road in the middle of the night? And those would have to be a good source of food for Bigfoot. So I just want you to, I just want you to think about that the next time you're leaned over, like, oh my God, we just got the zebra striped double rattler with the extra long fang, and I'm taking a picture of it, and there might be somebody over in the berm going, dude, that's my lunch. Would you get out of the way? So I just want to point that out. So has this affected you at all, to the point where you're like, I don't.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I'm saying, has this affected you as far as going out in the middle of the night, or has it made you want to go out every night looking for snakes, hoping that you have another encounter?
At first, it didn't affect me. I mean, at first, it affected me as far as that canyon went, but no effect out in Skull Valley. Once we dropped down out of that canyon, it didn't matter. But once you're up in the thickness of those cedar trees and all that, it was a little more creepy. But the more research I did and the more things I looked into, I started to get more comfortable with the idea, and that's why my friend and I went back out in December. He still wasn't quite up to the task. I couldn't get him out of the car. I had to, at one point, there were some weird noises off to one side that can't really identify. Might have just been a raccoon. It was just kind of that chittering noise, but that kind of got him stuck in the car. He wouldn't get out, and then I almost got him. He was halfway out, and he was kind of leaning halfway out. I almost was going to get him out to go hike around, but unfortunately there was too much snow, and he wore tennis shoes. Even though I told him we were going to go, winter hiking to do some of this, and I was at least going to get him to get out a little out of the car at least. And we got a response call after I did one of the calls, and my recording wasn't very good. I haven't been able to figure out how to clean it up. It just wasn't a good microphone, but it was identical to a response call they got in season one of Finding Bigfoot. They were in Logan, Utah, and I believe it was winter as well. And this return call they got, and that's where I had heard it before. And so then when I did a kind of siren-like call out there, we got a similar call, and that's how I recognized this, because I'd seen that episode only a few weeks before that. And so that's the best way to hear it is just, go to that episode. It's the Holy Cow. It's a Bigfoot episode. The picture for the episode has Bobo on a snowmobile.
Oh, geez.
And that took place in Logan, Utah in 2012, and they got a pretty good response call, and I got the exact same thing out in this area. In Rush Valley is the closest name to that. You go through Rush Valley just before going into this canyon.
Now, is there research that you've done on this area to see if there's other sightings and stuff or not? Have you, having talked to you a couple times, you seem like a pretty studious person, and I like the kind of guy who would probably like, okay, let's find out what else has been happening out here.
I haven't gone talking to people because I wouldn't even know where to start. And a lot of the people out in that area aren't going to talk about it probably because they're farmers and stuff like that. They just don't seem like they'll be receptive to opening. But I have talked to other people by happen chance. I guess it's just a matter of luck. There was one time I was out there, and my mom wanted to see the area out there, and plus there were some historical sites out in that area that she wanted to go to. So I drove her out there, and I was down off the road, the direction that this thing went, and I was just trying to see if I could find any prints or anything that I could mark and come back with some plaster and stuff. But while I was down there, a car stopped to ask if she was okay because she was standing up on the side of the road. And she, I'm sitting here shaking my head because I didn't want her telling people what I'm doing. But the lady said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. My son saw a Sasquatch right here, and he's down there looking for tracks." So I'm down in the trees, just shaking my head like, "Oh my gosh!" But making me sound like a crazy person. But
Jordan, you do realize you're out looking for snakes on the road, right? Okay. So I gotta think somebody's gonna be like, what's your son doing over there, his hands and knees? Well, he saw a snake. He's looking for skin. He's looking for snake. What? Okay, so this person stops and asks.
That's like the normal side of crazy, I guess.
I guess.
And so my mom tells this lady, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, oh boy, here it comes. Here comes the response or something. And then I about fell over when I heard the lady say, oh, yeah, this is a pretty squatchy area. I said, what? I'm sitting here thinking, that's not what I expected to hear.
Pretty squatchy area. Okay.
Well, that's a pretty specific term to use, too.
Yeah.
So that tells me that people have seen something in that area before, but nobody's really talked about it. And then to fast forward a little bit, I was preparing for a backpacking trip in those same mountains, just a couple miles north of where I had the sighting. And at where I used to work, I was working with a guy that just started, and he'd spent many years, and he still goes up there on horseback with family and friends, running cattle. And he was telling me about something. I just kind of poked and prodded because it was the same area, and I didn't allude that I was talking about Bigfoot at all. I just asked him. I said, "Hey, has anything weird happened while you've been up there?" And because I was asking, trying to gauge like a spot to go and backpack to and spend a couple nights. And he said, "Yeah, now that you ask, I did have something weird happen up there." And what he described to me was exactly what I've heard in other things that people have described as Sasquatch behavior. And he showed me and pinned it on my map on my phone where they were at. They were kind of in a clearing camping where they had the horses tied up. I guess there was some lone cedar tree or something that they were able to hitch the horses to, and then they were laying out on their bedrolls, just like some good old classic cowboys, and by their campfire. And his friend was asleep already, and he's laying there trying to go to sleep. And all of a sudden, before this next part, while he's laying there trying to go to sleep, they're getting rocks thrown at him. And he's trying to wake his friend up, and his friend's not waking up, just out cold, I guess. And but rocks are being chucked at him. Now, this is an area that is not very easy to get to. An area that I'd backpack to, I had to get to the closest place I could get that I could still carry my own water in, and have enough water on the way in, and then be able to pump water at the lake. Well, where they were at, there's no water at all, and to carry enough water up that far, because we hiked 8 miles, so it's a 60-mile round trip, 8 miles up, 8 miles back, and he was even further up than that into the Stansburys, and then they did it on horseback, so it's super easy for them to get further up and take all the water they need with them. And so the chances of somebody being up there throwing rocks at them in the middle of the night, just below the summit, is not very likely. and not to mention that after the rock throwing was just this awful screaming. He said there's just this horrible screaming noise accompanied with branches breaking. And he said you could tell that they weren't small branches. They sounded like good sized branches getting snapped without any effort at all. And I asked him, I said, did the screaming sound similar to like a woman screaming? And he said, yeah, exactly. He's like, that's pretty much it. And the only thing he could do is he said he moved his bedroll closer to the fire and pulled his rifle closer to him and just laid there, tried to go to sleep, threw a couple more logs on the fire to get it built up a little bigger, and hoped that would be enough to keep whatever that was away.
Did his friend ever wake up?
No, not even through the screaming.
Wow. Okay. That's not the first time I've heard that this week. that that there was a creature screaming in a campsite at
Yeah.
night, where one person heard it and the other people knew the creature was there, but still didn't hear the screaming. They were awake and and still didn't hear the screaming. That's kind of wild. That's just wild to me.
Yeah, that is weird. That's wild.
Yeah, because I mean, I've heard that kind of, I mean, I know coyotes do that. They'll, they get all worked up and they're killing something. It'll literally sound like a woman being murdered. Not that I know what a woman being murdered sounds like, but I can imagine, like, and I mean, it's woke me up out of a dead sleep. I don't know how you could lay there, especially outside in a sleeping bag. That would have to be not very comfortable to begin with. You would think you wouldn't be in a deep deep sleep.
I can't sleep that well when I go camping like that. Kudos to anybody who can sleep that soundly camping. I can't. I don't know if my body just stays on high alert, but
I don't know. That's just that's a real cowboy.
I don't know how to do it.
Like you said, that's a real cowboy.
Yeah.
Did he happen to mention, like, how are the horses acting?
I don't remember if he mentioned anything about the horses. And I didn't think to ask. I'm sure they were. I grew up with horses, and my best guess would be that the horses are going to be pretty unsettled at this point. They're probably smelling something that they're not smelling, and then plus those hearing that combined with something smelling off. The horses have great senses,
Oh yeah, because they can sense how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just from how you're sitting on them, they can sense different things. So it's I'm sure. I just want see that's. That's curious. You get out there and you start talking to people, and that's the best kind of evidence you're going to get, other than your own. It kind of verifies, what you guys saw. That there is something going on, if there's something out there. So.
Oh yeah, and I had forgot that he'd mentioned the rock throwing to me, and so I brought it up again with him, and I'd mentioned, I got thinking, could it have been a bobcat? And he said no. You remember I told you there was rocks being thrown at us. Bobcats can't throw rocks. I said, oh, you're definitely right. Yeah, bobcats aren't throwing rocks at you. That's for sure. And
yeah, you're right. They're not, and that is a wild thing, because the other thing that people, it seems like they get rocks thrown at them, but they never get hit by them.
Right.
And you'd almost have to purposely not try to hit somebody if you're throwing rock. You know what I'm saying? even
right.
By mistake, if you were just lobbing rocks in a general direction, you're probably going to hit somebody. So he must have pretty good aim. That's all I can say is, I mean,
especially when you hear about,
if they can harness that, somebody'd have a really good pitcher. I could just, I know some pitching staffs that could use somebody with that aim. Yeah.
Well, I got looking into, and then I'll come back to my experience up in the Stansburys after talking to him. But to go along with what you're saying, there's a couple campsites up in Logan, Utah, that just in 2021 had a spike in reports of Sasquatch activity, if you will, and there was even the news. I don't think it was on the news, but it was just like on the website. But the news reported on it, kind of a little article, and there was rocks getting thrown into people's campsites that were softball sized and larger, and they were coming up and over the trees and into the campsites. So it's pretty amazing that they chuck stuff like that up and over trees and not hit anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's luck.
Exactly. And go ahead and pick up a rock or a softball sized rock and just chuck it over a tree.
Right.
Like a 20-foot high tree. Go ahead. It's not as easy as what you think, you know?
Mm-mm.
So that's some interesting stuff there. So now what else? So then you alluded to something else then. Would you say it?
Yeah. Yeah, after I was talking to this coworker, I wanted to get up and go to that same area where they camped, but after just assessing the water I would need and the distance to that, it wasn't feasible to get there on foot. I figured I'd have to just connect with him at some point and go on horses with him up there if I wanted to that bad. But I figured it doesn't have to be that exact spot, so I chose a location that was just a couple miles south of where he had his sighting, and it was right next to a lake. And spacing the name of the South Willow Lake is what it's called. It's about a little over 8,000 feet in elevation, just below the Stansbury summit. And that's where we ended up camping for a couple nights, my brother-in-law and I. And he turned in early the second night. He wanted to get enough rest for the hike down in the morning, and so I just before sundown I did a few rock clacks, just looking around the area. The trees were really hard to get to. I didn't think wood knocks made sense, but there was a lot of rock, and so I did a couple of rock clacks, did a couple vocals. And then just before it got completely dark, I did one more call or vocal to try to get a response, and then I just went and sat by the fire and waited. And just given time for something that's curious about what's going on to move on in and check us out. And I heard rocks falling from the cliffs above us, because we're kind of sitting in a bowl. And so I get up from the fire and I walk around, and my lights, at this point, I was wishing I brought my dad's small spotlight, but I didn't. I didn't want to take the extra weight. I thought my brand new headlamp, Petzl headlamp or whatever, would have been bright enough to have that kind of distance, but it's good. It's a good bright headlamp. Just doesn't have the distance that this spotlight has that my dad lets me borrow. But so I got up and I was shining at the rock wall, and between the distance and the smoke, I was having a hard time. I could make out that it was the rock wall of the cliff, and I could see some detail, but it wasn't. I don't think it was bright enough to even pick up eyeshine if anything was up there. And so I forget it. I'll just go back and sit by the fire. And right as I turn around and I'm heading back to my chair by the fire, I hear three taps from the top of the cliff, just clack, clack, clack. I'm like, okay, well I know exactly what that is. That's not just a rock falling, because you could hear that the clacking was in one spot. It wasn't like a descending clack, as if you were listening to a rock fall and hit in different places as it fell. This was in one specific spot. And then just after I finished the thought, after hearing clack, 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 because I thought to myself, holy crap, that was a rock clack. Right after I finished that thought, I hear clack, 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 clack. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of rocks just cascaded off of the edge of the cliff and dropped. So it sounded like something was rhythmically beat on the rocks until a bunch broke loose and fell from the cliffside. Luckily, this was on the other side of the lake, so it wasn't anywhere near us. Enough to hear it, and my brother-in-law heard it, and because it woke him up, and so that was pretty wild. So at that point, that's when I called it quits that night. I said, okay, I put the fire out and went to bed. I figured that was kind of, I took that as like a warning, like to shut the heck up kind of thing, kind of ruined our welcome.
Yeah, I would guess so. Holy smokes. I mean, that's the first time I've heard something like that. Like um I mean, that's a real warning, you know?
Oh yeah, I can't think of anything else up there that could do that, and no human being is going to be up on these cliffs. I can shoot you a picture later of what that area looked like, or looks like, and there was no moon this night, so it was pitch black, and there was no lights up there, so there wasn't a person up there on the Stansbury, the lower edges of the Stansbury summit on those sheer cliffs, moving around without lights, banging on rocks. They'd fall to their death. I mean, that's just
Yeah, exactly.
you know.
Exactly. Jeez. Wow. But I gotta tell you what, you got some nerve, man, to keep going. The desire to know or to experience stuff is I feel like Yoda is great in you, son. Great in you, my son. Holy smokes. So,
Yeah, that first sighting left me wanting more. So
and I guess it can work two ways, right? It can either scare you to
yeah,
death to not want to do something, or it can. And I mean, look, how long you been out looking in the desert for snakes anyway? Years, I'm assuming.
yeah, we've been going out that specific area for probably, at least I have. And my friend who's like 60, he's 64. He's been going out there for 40 years, but he usually didn't go through this canyon. He'd come on I-80 from Salt Lake, like you're going to go out to Wendover, Nevada, and then he would turn off of I-80 and go down that desert road. But I've only been going out there for about 8 years.
Well, I think that's long enough, though. If something's going to happen, it's going to happen. It would have happened. You haven't felt
Mm-hmm.
in danger or anything up till now. It's just now you'll be a little more observant.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Above where snakes are crawling, you'll be looking around. So what was interesting then, though, is so when we first talked, do you want to share then what may have been another encounter, like way, way a lot farther away from the Utah desert or whatever,
Oh yeah.
Utah mountains. And once again, we'll blame it on snakes because I think you were out looking for snakes, right?
Yep, exactly right. Yeah, we were out in southern Illinois. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we were in southern Illinois, south of Carbondale, Illinois. That's where the SIU or whatever the Southern Illinois University is. We were down in near Wolf Lake is where we were at. That's where a place called Snake Road is, and it's pretty cool area. Again, the snake theme. We were there looking for snakes, and one night I purposefully waited till once it gets to a certain point, it starts getting too cool at night, and people leave. Other people will come and look for snakes there as well, but they usually leave before nightfall. And I purposely stayed about a little past halfway on this 2.5 mile stretch of road, so I could walk back in the dark and take an opportunity to do some calls. Because this happens to be not too far from the area where they, back in I think it was the 70s or something like that, they had the Big Muddy monster, which is just a Sasquatch.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But that's what they call it in that area. It's the Big Muddy monster, and I wanted to do some calls because I mean the Big Muddy River comes right up through the swamps and everywhere next to this road. And I was walking down an area, and there's these bluffs, these cliffs that run along the edge of the road. And that's where the snakes will go to brumate during the winter. And in some spots, it'll dip back, and you just get this great echo, like an amphitheater. And there was an owl back there, just vocalizing, and so that got me thinking, oh, this probably be a great spot to do a couple whoops or something like that, just some short vocals, and so I did a couple, and then I did a tree knock, and then just kind of tried to walk as quietly as I could, so I could hear over the gravel crunching under my feet, and started making my way back to the car. And I get back to the car, my friend's waiting there. This is the 64-year-old guy I was telling you about. He's got an eye condition, and so he can't see very well at night, and so he didn't want to be walking back through that road even with a headlamp. So he was already back at the car waiting, and then I get there and we're talking, and as we're standing there talking, from pretty close to the area, approximately where I did the call, we hear just this wild, it didn't sound like anything that would be in that area. It was like it almost sounded ape-like. It was like a ow, ow, but we heard that 3 times, but it was really, really loud. And my friend turns to me and he goes, "What the heck was that?" And I tell you, one thing I think it is, and he seemed to, he was dead set on, no, that's a bird. That's a bird. I guarantee you that's a bird. And I'm like, I don't know of any bird that's got a set of lungs on it like that. And I know for bird sizes, that they've got more surface area in their lungs than a lot of other animals, but that doesn't mean that they're vocalizing like this. It was not a bird noise. And I mentioned this noise to, I mimicked it the best I could for a couple people that live in the area, and they go to that area all the time, and they were like, "That's nothing I've ever heard before." Yeah, they couldn't think of anything it could be. They're like, "Well, it's not a mountain lion, it's not a bobcat, it's not this." And I got that from several people, and then I even went and combed over audio recordings of different animals in that area, and now the closest one that came to it was 2 bobcats fighting, but that was only close. It wasn't the same. It was just similar, and so that still wasn't it. And then I want to know who you told me about.
Oh, Stan Courtney. Did you go check out his?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did he have anything similar?
I did, and yes, he did. I can't remember which one it was though now. I think it was one of the Colorado ones. He had some recordings labeled Colorado, and that one of those was pretty similar.
I want to know who would be out recording 2 bobcats fighting. That's who got that record. Had to be a guy looking for poisonous snakes. That's all I can say. It would be the guy out there recording. So that's kind of wild though to go to Illinois and kind of have a similar, have some sort of mysterious encounter, like something that you can't explain for sure, because I gotta think,
yeah,
you're right. If you've been out 8, 9 years, 10 years in the woods, and you're camping and you're hiking, and your buddy's been out there 40 years, I mean, you do know, you may not know everything that's out there, but you kind of know some stuff that shouldn't be. You know what I'm saying? You kind of get a feel for what should be there. You may not know everything that is there,
right,
but what makes sense or what seems out of place, or I mean, am I explaining that well enough? I don't know, but I think you guys sounds like you have enough experience, and and you're pretty alert and detailed. I mean, you have to be alert to find snakes. Have an eye
Yeah,
for
well,
detail.
the road cruising method is kind of the lazy way of finding
Oh, see,
a
now
lot
you
of
just
species.
I just talked you up, and just how great and now you're like, well, really, we're the surfer dudes of snake.
You still got to have an eye for it.
Yeah.
A lot of people drive down that road and don't even realize that they're seeing that there's snakes on the road, and they run them over. They have no idea, and some people don't even know that there's snakes in their area. There was one time we were talking to somebody in Illinois on another year we went, and she told the guy I usually go with, she said, "Hon, there ain't no snakes here." And he's like, "Don't tell me that. I just flew all the way from Utah."
Jeez. Oh.
Well, there's plenty of snakes there. There's 23 species within this one 2.5 mile stretch of road in this conservation area. And so some people just don't know what's around them. But as far as the Illinois stuff goes, I kind of did some research before, and I found out that Southern Illinois in 2017 had the highest amount of Sasquatch reports and sightings in 2017. And
really, I think that surprised a lot of people for sure.
Yeah, and so I kind of targeted that area. I mean, that's where we were going anyways, and so I went with a plan to, do some calls and try to get something to happen, and so that kind of helped, going to kind of a highly concentrated area, I guess you could call it. There just seems to be a lot of activity in that area, because then it's still kind of unconfirmed, but I got some potential eye shine just outside the lodge in the Giant City State Park there the one night. This eye shine was definitely taller than a deer, and it was almost level with where I was standing at the base of a hill, and then it dropped off even more down to the forest floor. And so whatever I was looking at was a lot taller than a deer, and there just really isn't any bears there right now. They say they're on their way back, but
still, it'd have to be
some of the deer there.
It'd have to be a bear standing on its hind legs if it's way taller than a deer.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So what's the odds you're just gonna catch a bear standing on its hind legs at night?
Yeah, and I'm sitting there shining my light on it, and I've got my wife on a video call at the same time, and I'm asking her, "Are you seeing this eye shine?" She's saying yeah, so she's seeing it at the same time, and I couldn't. All I could get was the eye shine. I could not light it up any more than that, and but I could shine the light around it and make out the trees and everything, but whatever hair color this thing had to have been darker than the night around it, because it seemed darker than the nighttime darkness around it. And I was the following night, I went back to the same area and shined my light about the same distance, shine my light, had eye shine, and got thinking, oh, this looks more like a deer. The eyes are a little wider apart. And that was another thing with that the night before, is the eyes were closer together. And then when I shined the light on the deer, I could make out the shape of the deer's head. I could kind of see the fur color, but not with the thing the night before. And I've heard that described before with when people have had nighttime sightings. They've had lights on them. They almost just seem darker than, they get the eye shine, and they just seem darker than the darkness, which is just weird to say.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that a lot too. So that's hard to it's hard to explain. I don't quite understand that. Why? Like it's almost absorbing the light and becoming dark. You know, I don't know, like it's the dark or the light's disappearing into it, so that it
And
just
I mean,
kind of.
it's not an unreasonable explanation, because that's literally what happens with some, like my friend's eye condition, for example. The pigment on the inner globe of the eye changes and darkens, and that um, if I'm remembering how he explained it to me, it's that the black spots and everything that are forming in the globe of his eye are absorbing the light, so that light's not reflecting and bouncing back, which helps you see. And so darker colors like that can do that, from what I understand. And
Oh, there you go.
um,
Well, maybe that is an explanation for it. For sure. It's
and that's if I'm
just.
remembering what he told me correctly, but
Well, I'm
I'm not
just
going to
gonna tell
pretend like I
you.
understand the physics of light.
I well, yeah. Well, look, I'm a mailman. I don't understand the physics of much of anything. Um, but I'd just like to say, like, be careful out there. Now, since I don't know if your friend will be listening, but maybe you take this 64-year-old dude out there with you because you can outrun him if it all goes down. Is that is that is that like I don't have
He
to
might have the same line of thinking.
I I don't have to outrun the bear or the Bigfoot. I just got to outrun the other guy I'm with.
It's going
I
to be faster than him.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
fascinating. And I will say, like, the one thing when we've talked to people who have made calls, and the judge who's on here sometimes, he always point out, like, the scary thing about making calls is you don't know what you're saying. What are you
Oh, exactly.
doing
Yeah.
making a call? Are you like inviting somebody to come fight? Are you inviting somebody to come, you know, your challenge, like it's a challenge, or you're announcing I'm here, and whatever. I mean, who knows? So that always is, that always seems like a risky thing for me too. But you know, that's why you guys are out there looking at chasing snakes, and I'm not, because you're willing to do some experimental stuff to try to get the answers you seek. I don't know. Gotta hand it to you
Yeah, I
though.
definitely say don't go alone. I never do any of that alone. Um, so I think that's a big factor. Uh, if you're going to go out and do calls and stuff like that, at least
Yeah.
have one person with you. And if you can get a little group, that's great. But from my understanding of listening to other things, people, other people will say that whether it's talk to Ronnie LeBlanc from Expedition Bigfoot, and then I've heard things that oh shoot, I just spaced his name. He has a Bigfoot museum up in
Cliff.
Oregon. Cliff,
Cliff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Cliff. He said, they've both said similar things, that, or maybe it was just Cliff I heard it from, but there's times you'll do a call and you won't get any response, but there's they'll ignore the call as far as responding to it, but they'll kind of move in closer to see who's making a fuss and making these noises. And so they'll mention that it's important that when you do these calls, just kind of hang tight and be patient and just sit in that area, and give things a time to come in, and that seemed to work pretty well every once in a while for me. But I don't do it alone.
That's listen, I would have to say that's probably very good. That's a very good rule of thumb. Don't do that alone. Um, Before we jump off here, I know you said you had another little that's doesn't seem to be Bigfoot related, but just another event or incident in Utah to just make it even scarier to be in Utah. Um, Out in the middle of like, you want to tell everybody, like, what else happened out there?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So this is that same road out in Skull Valley, and again, we were road cruising for snakes, and it was just this past summer. Um, Now this area is near. If you take this road from I-80, it'll eventually run you right to the army base, the Dugway Army Base. And some people, depending who you talk to, they'll kind of unofficially call it Area 52. I don't know who came up with that, but it is weird out there. There's a lot of weird stuff. A lot of UFO watchers will go out onto those peaks out there, like Deseret Peak or Stansbury Peak, and they'll do night watches of the sky. And well, we were just down driving through the road there, doing our road cruising for snakes thing, and I tapped my friend on the shoulder. I was driving, and I leaned over, tapping him, tell him to look ahead, and I said, "You see that red ball going across the road?" And this is up in the distance, and it's this glowing red ball that appears to be hovering above the road. And it appeared to be like about brake light height, but then we weren't seeing any headlights, which was weird. And I know some military vehicles, though, they're practicing nighttime stuff, that they can run dark with just night vision and drive, but I'm not sure that the brake lights are running. That would kind of defeat the purpose. But aside from that, here's where it gets kind of weird. I don't know of any military vehicle that can drive through a fence where there's no gate and leave the fence completely intact and not mangled. Because as we got to this area where we saw this red ball just kind of go across the road for several miles on this stretch, it's just that the fence is close to the road and there's no gates, there's no inlets or outlets to get into these fields. It's just a fence, and the area where the ball, this glowing orb or whatever you want to call it, kind of glided across the road at about the height of a brake lights on a larger vehicle. It just passed through these fences and then into a field and disappeared. So there was nowhere for a vehicle to drive straight across at any point in this area, and so it was really baffling. Kind of cool. It didn't really freak us out enough. It was just like, what the heck? That was weird. Kind of, just off-putting.
I think you should start wearing a GoPro on your head. I gotta be honest.
I need to. I've got one.
I'm surprised you don't have like a dash cam or something.
I do. I have a nice one, but guess where it's at? It's still in its box.
Oh my gosh! Are you serious?
Yeah. After the Sasquatch sighting, I went out and got one, and I meant to have it in my car before this road cruising season, and now here we are, almost we're pretty much back in the winter in Utah now, and that I didn't ever get that dash cam set up for the road cruising season. So,
well, since there's no road cruising season right now, then go out there till 2 a.m. and hook it up, get it hooked up. No
kidding. I need to have it ready.
Well, I almost think people need one facing backwards too, in the back window would almost, because I wonder how, just like you thought that thing waited and crossed until the other car went by. How many wait until you guys have gone by and then cross the road, and I'm not sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I thought about that same thing while hiking.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do know some people that have, I think they're in Area X. Those guys do have GoPros that face backwards on walking sticks and sometimes on their heads because, these creatures do seem to know that you're looking at them and they'll hide. Yeah. They'll hide and wait and pop out. But yeah, that's interesting, that ball of light. I mean, and of course, with you guys being right there by a military base, I mean, how can it not be something whether it's terrestrial or extraterrestrial tied to that base, you know, or maybe it's something extraterrestrial just, you know, checking out the base or looking for snakes.
Yeah,
Maybe it's just some aliens looking for snakes. like we
well,
already
there's plenty of weird things around that base. Yeah.
yeah,
There was one documentary.
What was that? What was the
So I think
documentary?
Oh, I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt yet. I couldn't tell when you were talking or not.
Oh no, you're right.
I think you're cutting out.
Yeah, you just broke up a little bit. What was the documentary?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. I think it was one of the episodes on. I think it's just called UFO. It's on Discovery Plus, I think. And there's one episode where they're talking to a guy near Dugway, Utah, and he shows a picture that he took. He was just outside of his trailer, and it took a picture of a red beam shooting up from the ground from the base out there at Dugway, and he said when the beam went up or whatever, it three lights descended out of the sky around the beam, and then when the beam went back down or finished or whatever, it fired a couple more times up into the sky, and then the lights shot back up, into the atmosphere, just kind of just gone. It seemed like UFOs or whatever. And we last year, my wife and I saw that same thing not too long after I'd seen that documentary, and it's just a red beam just from the ground straight up. But we didn't see any lights come out of the sky, but just a red beam. And now that's just something whatever the base is doing.
Like a signal, but that's just weird. I mean,
yeah, it's kind of, it was cool to see, but it's just like, what are they doing?
Like, what are you signaling? Like, am I supposed to be here? You're not signaling. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'll tell you what, you just have told me some stuff about Utah that makes me glad I made it out alive. That's all I can say is, but it's such a beautiful place, but I could tell, if you get out in there, it's a lonely, desolate place, and you really got to know what you're doing, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, Jordan,
make it back out here this way, I'll happily take you out to those areas.
Oh, geez. Well, if we do, I'll definitely be giving you a call because, I've heard from a couple other people from Utah. We had Alex on from there, and I know there's some places she'd like to show us too. So it might be worth the trip back out just to do some checking out.
For sure.
Some paranormal hotspots just for the fun of it. I mean, but I don't know. If I didn't have to fly, that's the part if I didn't have to fly to go out and look at aliens and Bigfoot and poisonous snakes, that's the hardest part is flying. So, but but I appreciate you reaching out and coming on and sharing these experiences, and I'd love to hear from more people from Utah that had in that area that you were talking about. If there was any more experience, and especially around that military base, that would be cool too, to hear some stuff from Dugway. If there was any more people eyewitnesses that had seen.
I'm sure there's plenty. It's just a matter of finding them.
Well, it almost seems like it's matter of fact out there that you expect to see something a little crazy. So, but I don't know. It sounds like there's something going on. So be careful out there looking for snakes, and get that dash cam hooked up because that would be
I'll get it done.
Yeah, that'd be awesome to see some of that stuff. So, but Jordan, I appreciate you coming on, and I hope everybody enjoys.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, hope everybody enjoys this as much as I did. So I almost feel bad that Jason's working and I'm not. So All right, Jordan. Well, you
He
take.
missed out. Hopefully he'll get to listen to it later.
All right. Well, be safe out there, Jordan.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.